All I did was put up a fence, 6 feet of cedar privacy, something to give me a little breathing room after a brutal divorce, and suddenly I was the neighborhood terrorist. That's what it felt like, at least. The HOA president, Marcia Billings, treated it like I'd planted landmines along the property line. She actually called 911. I half expected a SWAT team to show up accuse me of holding garden gnomes hostage. Now, I didn't just move to Willowbrook Estates for the pristine lawns and copy-paste houses. I wanted peace. I'd just come out the other side of a messy chapter in my life and thought, a quiet, orderly neighborhood might help me breathe again. But what I didn't know, what they don't put in the brochures, is that peace here came with terms and conditions, namely full obedience to Marcia Billings and her sacred HOA bylaws. She came knocking 3 days after I moved in, clipboard in hand, lecturing me about how my wooden chairs weren't aesthetic match for the neighborhood's approved wicker. That should have been my warning shot. But the real firestorm started when I decided to put up a fence. Now, I'm not some clueless homeowner. I'm an urban planning researcher. I know the laws, I know the codes. So when I filed for my permit, I triple-checked everything. The city approved my 6-foot cedar privacy fence without a second glance. I had it professionally installed, made sure it was within all the boundaries. Legal, clean, nothing shady. What I didn't factor in was that my backyard backed directly up to Marcia's, and apparently that meant she thought it was hers. She watched everything. I couldn't water my tomato plants without feeling her gaze judging me from behind her blinds. When she reported me for leaving my hose coiled improperly, I knew something was off. So construction began, and the moment those posts started going in, I heard it, the angry clack of heels. Marcia, in a floral dress and fire in her eyes, marched across the street like she was leading a battle charge. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she snapped. I told her calmly, "Building a fence on my property. All permitted. I've got the documents if you'd like to see them." She barely looked at the paperwork before launching into her rant. "This violates the welcoming aesthetic of Willowbrook. You're turning us into a prison camp." I kept my cool. I knew what that fence represented. Not just privacy, but a boundary. A literal and emotional one that I finally got to set for myself after years of compromise. She didn't get that. She only saw asymmetry. By that afternoon, there was a printed notice on the community board calling my fence a blight on neighborhood harmony. She even attached a blurry photo that made it look like I was building a bunker. It was theater. Petty dramatic theater. Then she texted me, "You're going to regret this. Inspection tonight." That night, 2 cops showed up. Marcia, standing proudly beside them, tried to get my fence condemned like it was a meth lab. I handed the officers my permits, contractor's license, everything. One cop flipped through the paperwork, glanced at Marcia, and deadpanned, "Ma'am, this is legal." The other one added, "It's actually a really nice fence." Her face, oh, priceless. But Marcia wasn't done. She called an emergency HOA meeting the next night, turned the community center into a war room. Posters of my fence, altered to look crooked and cheap, lined the walls. She declared me a danger to property values and proposed a $500 fine plus daily penalties. I stood up and called her out right then. "These photos are doctored." The room gasped. People started leaning in. A neighbor even pointed out the editing marks. Her grip on the room was slipping. And then came the twist. Bianca, coffee shop barista, former Marcia supporter, showed up at my door the next day with evidence. Photos of Marcia at the local print shop, literally pointing at my fence photos, telling the guy to make it look worse. "I thought she was just picky," Bianca said, guilt heavy in her voice. "I didn't know she was lying." We posted the photos to the HOA group chat. Within minutes, neighbors flooded in with their own stories. Fines over mailbox paint shades, threats over garden gnomes. One guy even got cited for his wind chimes. Marcia, of course, spun a new lie. Claimed she'd enhanced the images for clarity. Then she posted a video of my fence, now spray painted with graffiti. I ran outside. Yep, 3 panels vandalized. But the paint was still wet. The spray pattern too deliberate. And here's the kicker, there was a trail of paint droplets leading straight to Marcia's property. She faked the graffiti on my fence to prove her point. Bianca and I documented it all. Jared, ex-cop neighbor, joined in. "She's not just power tripping," he muttered. "She's committing crimes now." Turns out she bought the same paint her ex-brother-in-law sells at the local hardware store. We had the receipt. Literally. Things escalated again. Another city inspection, Marcia had filed a formal complaint. The inspector came, looked around, and said, "Honestly, this is better built than most fences I inspect." That same day, Bianca pulled up HOA financial records. Weird payments labeled Community Standards Enforcement. Jared noticed copy-paste digital signatures on dozens of Marcia's official documents. Forgery, misuse of funds, falsified complaints. We built a case. But the final blow, Bianca played a voice memo. A recorded call, Marcia's voice crystal clear saying she was escalating the Henderson situation until she gives up and moves away. That night at the next emergency meeting, we dropped every piece of evidence. Photos, emails, audio, the room turned. And Marcia, she panicked. Tried to fight back with another fake city permit revocation, but Bianca held up her phone. On speaker, the voice on the line said, "Marcia, I can't send more fake documents unless I get the final payment." Yeah, that happened. We held an emergency election. I won by a landslide. The first thing I did, void every one of Marcia's bogus fines. Neighbors lined up to have their penalties reviewed. Jared and I went through the financials. She'd used HOA funds for everything from her landscaping to a leadership retreat that was actually a weekend spa trip. And just when we thought it was over, I woke up to find part of my fence smashed. Precision damage. A receipt from Henderson's Hardware, same gloves, same sledgehammer, paid with a card that matched Marcia's grocery run the week before. But she was gone. House emptied for sale sign up. Vanished. At our first neighborhood BBQ, Jared raised a beer to Angelina's fence, the wooden wall that brought down the queen. People laughed, cheered. For the first time, we felt like a community. But a week later, I found something carved into one of the new fence boards. Just 4 words, "See you soon." Yeah. I called Jared and Bianca. We documented everything. But Marcia, she'd already slipped away. That night, as I stood alone looking at my battle-scarred fence in the moonlight, I felt calm. Not because it was over, but because I wasn't scared anymore. That fence, my fence, it stood for something. Not just privacy, but boundaries, healing, strength. So, what would you have done in my place? Ever faced down an HOA tyrant? And more importantly, do you think Marcia's really gone for good? Let me know in the comments. I'll be out here sipping coffee, watching my fence, and waiting.